2, 1.
Hi, my name is Ellie Benson, and I did my big board on how countercultures of the past 5 decades have evolved into future mainstreams. So, how do I think of my topic? I've always kind of been interested in fashion and music, as they're both very relevant in today's world, and I've always just had a love for fashion. I plan to do something with it in the future. And I started with that. And then one day my sister and I were discussing how our mom wore similar clothes to what we did now, but some of the clothes she wore as a kid were also very, very different from what we're wearing now. And I just kind of found it interesting and how some of these trends were coming back and others weren't, etc., etc. So then with this, I started conducting research. I started mostly just with fashion and kind of waited and saw where it would take me. As I started with what trends were coming back and for what reasons, and what was hitting the runway today and what used to be hitting the runway. This led me to music and music festivals, such as what people were wearing at music festivals, what music they were listening to at music festivals, and merely just what music people were listening to during these different times when trends were coming back and forth. I quickly learned that all of these trends were following the same exact pattern, that they were started by youth movements and they started as a counterculture movement, but then a few generations later they became part of the mainstream. So before I really discuss my paper, 3 key terms that are essential to really understanding what everything I'm about to talk about are counterculture, mainstream, and pop culture. Counterculture is a group of people within a culture that separate themselves from the larger group due to things such as different beliefs, different viewpoints, etc., etc. Next is mainstream. This is ideas or attitudes or activities that are regarded as normal or socially acceptable. And lastly, we have pop culture. This is the ideals of humor, mystery, love, charisma, and they're all seen in popular music, popular fashion, various forms of art. So now we can begin, and my paper will kind of explain how countercultures of the past 5 decades have continuously evolved into mainstreams of the future trends in fashion and music through the commercialization of counterculture. So, the first example of this is music. Music begins as part of the counterculture in one generation, then within the next few decades becomes mainstream pop hits. And one of the very first examples of this is rock and roll music. It was started by youth movements in the United States, in the UK, and it was started as a rebellious genre for people trying to get away from the norm or rebel against the norm. It was embraced by the youth, and as the youth grew older, so did this music stuck with them and became Billboard top hits. Similar patterns can be seen with the popular artist of Bob Dylan in the genre of rap. This is all very significant because it demonstrates how quickly voices of resistance become commercialized and are sold to the mainstream. This can all start from businesses as they begin to profit from old countercultures. They take something old, commercialize it, and turn it into a money-making business. Yet, some say that this commercialization isn't really bad because it's what the consumer wants. It's what the mass wants. Although it is what the consumer wants, it's taking away from the original intention of what this genre or what this song or group was supposed to mean, what they stood for. It's important to show the significance of the counterculture, and it's important to show this ideal that this group or genre had, because it allows the mainstream, it expresses the critiques of the mainstream, and it allows us to learn from this. So next, we have music festivals. Today, music festivals are growing. They're predicted to become larger than sporting events in America, which is pretty crazy. But over the past few decades, changes of who goes to these music festivals, why they're going, and what happens at these music festivals have all occurred. They are now very popular among the masses, whereas they started with Woodstock, they weren't. Woodstock started in August of 1969, and it was supposed to be a huge celebration of different beliefs as the counterculture began to distance themselves from society. Then music festivals disappeared for a little while, but came back in the 1990s with festivals such as Austin City Limits, Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Coachella, ones I'm sure you've all heard of or all attended. And when they returned, they were a money-making business. They were huge. They were making billions. They were made for the mainstream to come and socialize while listening to their favorite songs that they hear on the radio. But some people say that they never really changed that much. They still were, for the basics, for people to come and listen to music, various different types of music. Which I guess if you're looking from a broad scheme of things, that's what it is. But taking a little bit of a closer look, this isn't really true because at first it was celebrating the rejection from society. They were trying to get away from it. But now it's basically just to go and listen to your favorite songs. Today it's made for people of all ages to come and listen. The festivals themselves continue to thrive, and the commercialization of these festivals has transformed the counterculture movement into something that can be profitable among the masses. Lastly, we have fashion. From generation to generation, major trends of the past 5 years have all been repeated. But this really isn't surprising to many of you because you're the ones wearing these trends, and the odds are some of you are wearing them right now. The fashion industry found it easy to use older, edgy trends and reintroduce them to the public as something that can be enjoyed by the masses. The commercialization drowns out the meaning of this trend. For example, the army jacket, something that I assume many of you have in your closet today and just wear it as a staple piece. But when this piece started, it was worn in irony by the counterculture in the 60s to represent peace and symbolize that they were against the war. But now, as I said, it's just your average staple piece that is edgy and goes with a lot of things. The exact same pattern can be seen with grunge and Doc Martens or combat boots. These trends all start with a simple algorithm. Vogue magazine states that all you do is take today's date, 2016, and subtract 25, which is the average year or the average age of designers who are mass producing these trends. This shows how these young designers take trends that started when they're very young, even though they're counterculture trends. They didn't get to participate in them, whether they agreed with them or not, but they get to take them now and use them and mass produce them as things that are never before seen, when really they were just not documented by history. It's easy for designers to mass produce these and to get society hooked on them through celebrities. Celebrities such as Rihanna can be seen wearing these edgy, grungy pieces all the time. So, now that we learn how this is all happening, how music festivals, and fashion are all being repeated, we can take a look into the future. We can predict the future mainstreams and countercultures of what is going to lie ahead. Some countercultures that are predicted are ones such as Reed Busters, which are people who are angered at and try to disassociate from Wall Street and the financial industry. Those who are trying to live strictly through voluntary work, and those who are going to be obsessed with technology. I'm sure this doesn't surprise many of you, though. Learning the future provides insight for what lies ahead, what's to come of our generations, and if we're going to continue this backwards momentum we're following now. So, how has countercultural of the past 5 decades moved into the future mainstreams? Easy, commercialization. All of these trends are resurfacing as popular decades later. People who start these counterculture movements are almost always kids. Youth movements are predicting the future unknowingly. They are the original source of these mainstream trends. Rock and roll music fought against segregation, hippies fought against the war on materialism, and the grunge movement challenged the ideals of conformity. All of this you may not know now though, because they are counterculture movements, and today you're just looking at the pieces they wore as mainstream pieces in your closet. The issue with this is that when they become commercialized, the meaning behind counterculture trends is drowned out in order to make them appealing to the mainstream. Our society is losing its ability to critique itself and learn from the messages of the past. Now that we know where the root of this problem lies, though, in youth movements, we can learn from this and take a step to change it. We can watch younger generations start the future mainstream and ensure that we're living in a society that's moving towards a future, not moving towards the past. So, how did this impact me? To say the least, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that America was letting such key aspects of our history fade into commercialization. We must be aware of this. We have to stay informed and pass the message on to future generations. Teach them the side of history that's not being taught. Inform them on the counterculture. Teach them the dangers of commercialization and what it's doing to our society. So now for my community outreach program. With keeping all these lessons that I've learned in mind, I wanted to create a community outreach program that incorporated these ideas while also giving back to my community. I decided that the best way to do this was a clothing drive. So, trends are going in and out of style, but there's 15% of all Americans who live in poverty who don't care about the mainstream or the counterculture, but merely just need clothes. So I decided to get in contact with the Baldwin Center. This is a program in Pontiac, Michigan, whose mission is to feed, clothe, educate, and empower men, women, and kids of all ages. The clothes that I was gathering in the drive would go to these men and women of all ages. So the logistics of my project were very simple. I got boxes and placed them at places that had a connection to me. At Seaholm, at Adat Shalom Synagogue, and at Corton Elementary School, which is the elementary school I attended. The goal of my drive was to not only provide people that couldn't afford clothes, but to teach people donating and to teach people how to defeat the label, defeat the mainstream. Show them that these people don't care about where their clothes come from, but they're really just lucky to have them. This was the poster I put around the school, around Adat Shalom, around Corton, that kind of talked about what I was doing with my project and where I was going with it. So, my project in motion. Once the drive started, I couldn't do too much except encourage people to donate. But I was asked by my old 5th grade teacher, who still is a 5th grade teacher, to come and talk to his class about my project, about my paper, and the importance of giving. So when I got there, I introduced myself, I talked about my project, and explained my paper. Then I told them how lucky I was to have their help and why I needed their help so much, because without them, this project would have been nothing. Lastly, I told them the importance of doing community service and what it's done for me and why I enjoy doing it so much. So this wasn't really initially part of my plan, but I can honestly say I'm so thankful I got the chance to do it. And it was one of my favorite parts of my community outreach program, is I really got to achieve my goal with helping kids, or with donations, and I got to teach them about mainstream and countercultures and how to defeat the label. I taught them the importance of giving back, while at the same time, the importance of learning from our past. So after this, I had my pickup 2 weeks later, and when I picked up the boxes from Seaholm and Adat Shalom, I was excited. They were full. I felt like I had achieved something. And then I went to Corton, and I was overwhelmed to say the least. Not only was it just the box I had given them, but 3 other carts full of boxes. I couldn't even fit them all into my car. I had to have a friend come and help me put them in his car as well. I was very excited, and I was even prouder to know as I talked to some of these 5th graders that they kept these lessons in mind. They told me that they wanted to keep donating, and that they had told all of their friends and their parents about mainstreams and countercultures and how to not buy into them. So next I went to the Baldwin Center, and I was very excited to do this because I never really got a chance to do a hands-on clothing drive like this, really donate the clothes. When I got there, the people who were owned the Baldwin Center were obviously very ecstatic, but then also as I started to unload my clothes, people coming into their clothes shop were very excited to see all the different options they had, which was a really cool experience just to see what exactly I was doing. I got to see exactly what my clothes were doing and what my impact had on other people. Here are kids at Corton packaging the clothes. Here is the my garage that was all the donations. And lastly, just kind of summing things up. Overall, I think this was a very amazing experience, and I wouldn't change any of it. I changed my perspective of trends, and I learned that history is crucial for our future. Youth are the ones starting all these counterculture trends, and it's important to notice them and notice what they stand for. Commercialization is destroying the meaning of these trends that youth movements clearly have a reason to start. And this clothing drive was a step to stop this. It was showing people that it was to show that people getting these clothes don't care about the label, but they are merely thankful for them. It was a chance to start and defeat the mainstream trends that are what mainstream trends are bringing to the table. Money. That's all they bring to the table. It was focusing on the meaning behind the clothes, their original intention. Because I do think that it's very important to learn what these trends originally meant, but I do think it's important to learn what they represent, but I don't think that a label of a mainstream or a counterculture should run your wallet. Thank you all for listening to my presentation.